This is the tiniest notebook in my collection, but it's about to become one of the most important too. Let's turn this adorable A7 size journal into my pen swatch library. And we're even going to color code the page edges so it's easy to find your way around later. Hi, it's Erin, and I used to keep a pen swatch page in each of my journals, but I got sick of setting it up over and over again, so this journal's going to solve that problem for me. We're going to kick off the swatches with all of my red and pink markers, and I need to separate these out into some categories as well. So we've got kind of the water-based markers, we've got paint markers separately, and I'm also going to divide the reds separately from the pinks. I did a little bit of casual research before I jumped in and started swatching my pens. I just looked up what some other people have done for pen swatching pages in the past, but I didn't end up really sticking to any particular pattern. I just wanted to show off pens that had a brush end, pens that had a smaller brush end or a bullet end, and if it had some kind of color signifier like the numbers on the Tombow dual brush pens or a color name on the barrel of the pen, I wanted to record that too. I wanted to make sure as well that I was keeping the process very quick and easy. Most of the swatch page examples that I saw when I looked them up involved drawing some kind of a box to color in with the pen. I knew immediately that I did not want to do that. That would take too much time, it was going to take too much energy, too much precision, and unlike every other journal really that I own, I don't actually feel like I need this one to be an aesthetic masterpiece on any level. I think it just needs to function because it really is just a reference. This is not creative expression, this is just a tool for me. Tombow dual brush pens are definitely the marker I own the most of, so they are what you'll see mostly throughout this video. I'm trying to make sure that I keep those together and leave a bit of space so that if I get any more of those pens, I have room to swatch those within the setup. I don't have the full set of the Tombow dual brush pens. I've actually mostly obtained them one pen at a time, which is the most expensive way to approach it, I think. I mostly picked them up when I needed a specific color for a specific theme, and sometimes I would even take my stationery bits into Officeworks with me and swatch the pens to find the one that fit the best, which is kind of the purpose this journal is going to serve as well. One minor pitfall that I've fallen into here is that I've trusted the colors on the lids and the barrels of the pens in order to separate them into their color categories, which I really shouldn't have done because that's not always an accurate reflection. Like with that calligraph there, probably could have gone into the browns and beiges, but at the same time when I'm going to set up a theme, then it's helpful for me to see on the page that that color maybe isn't the color that I thought it might be, which means it won't be the one for the setup. So it's not unhelpful to have that information there, and you will see some of the pens swatched in more than one color category because of this, finding this out as I go. Something else I wanted a really good record of is how my paint markers perform on black paper, just as a general indication of how well they layer over other things, because sometimes I do want to layer them over other things. I'm aiming to leave a little bit of space in between each of my color categories so that there's room for them to grow as I add new pens to my collection. And as someone who likes to keep their stationery collection fairly small, I'm being really picky about which pens actually make it into this journal because I don't want to add a swatch and then decide later that I want to get rid of that pen and then have a useless swatch in here. So I'm making sure to only use pens that I plan to keep in my collection. In the past, I actually really enjoyed having a pen test page in each of my journals because I didn't feel the need to be as discerning about which pens I was swatching. It was kind of only for the 6-month period that the journal would get me through, and it didn't matter too much if I got rid of pens outside of that period. Plus, there's definitely something to be said for having the swatches on the actual paper of the journal that you'll be using, because variations in paper can produce different results from different pens, and there were times that that was relevant, especially when I was using a watercolor page journal this time last year. That definitely behaved differently with my pens than with previous journals, but I've really settled in the 160 GSM white paper journal realm, and I think I'm going to stay there for the foreseeable future, at least. And this is a great resource for when I'm putting together a journal theme and I want to find that perfect green marker or the perfect soft beige for a second line highlight without having to swatch my pens against my stationery every single time I'm planning a setup. I am just about to start work on the new mystery journal for the second half of the year, which is a journal that I set up for 6 months and then give away on my channel, which means I'll be setting up 7 different themes pretty much back to back over the next several weeks, which means this journal is about to come in really handy as a resource for choosing the markers to go with the stickers and the washi tapes and the papers that I use in those themes. I know some people like to keep these swatch pages in a long-term collections notebook. That's not actually something that I keep or am really interested in keeping, so I think this system will work really well for me. It's also a really good way to use a tiny notebook if you're not really sure how to approach a notebook this small. I had to measure this journal to find out what size it actually is, and it's an A7 size. It's 74mm by 105mm, so tiny and very portable, which means it will have no trouble sliding into the drawer where I keep all of my active journals in my desk, which is pretty full at this point. Honestly, my journal lineup is not small, which is another benefit to this tiny little notebook. It will fit very well in that drawer without having to compete too much with all the A5s and square journals already in there. Also, it's adorable. You know when you see something small that's not usually small and you just find it so charming? Definitely has some of that effect, this little journal. Unfortunately, it's no longer available for purchase. This journal came with the Notebook Therapy Lucky Bag that was released in November last year, which I think is technically the 2025 Lucky Bag. I've been trying to do a bit of research to find an alternative journal that I might be able to link you to, but A7 doesn't seem to be a very popular size, unfortunately. I did find some A7 journals out there, but they don't say anything about the thickness of the paper in those journals, which makes me think the paper probably isn't going to be great. And when you're swatching markers and even doing second layers of marker like I'm doing with the Tombos, that's probably going to bleed through. Unfortunately, they're also not dotted. I could only find lined pages, so that's a little drawback for me too. Maybe not for everyone, but I definitely prefer a dotted page. Once you go dotted, it's really hard to go back to anything else. So I don't have an A7 equivalent journal that I can link you to, but I do think an A6 would work just as well for the purpose. It's just a little bit bigger than this one. I used an A6 TIEFOSSI journal for my travel journal last year, and it worked really well for that purpose for a 2-week trip to the UK. So TIEFOSSI have some really nice A6 options, and Archer and Olive also have a little handful as well. And if you're willing to go just a little touch bigger again, then you can go with a B6, which Archer and Olive actually have some spectacular B6 options. So I'll have some other small notebook options linked for you in the description. They won't be this notebook, but I do think they would work just as well. Something I was really surprised to find is that, much like my friend Jashi Corinne discovered when she swatched all of her pens like this, I have so many more green pens than any other color. And I never set out to obtain more green pens than any other color. I feel like maybe green just has a really broad tonal range. Is it possible for a color to have more of a tonal range than others? Color experts, please let me know in the comments. I don't understand why I have so many green pens, but I'm not mad about it. I just was very surprised. So, for science, if you have a swatch page or a swatch journal already, or if you set one up after watching this video, please report back in the comments and let me know which pen color you have the most of, because I think it would be really interesting if we all just have masses of green pens and have no idea why. In case you haven't noticed my pattern, I have been trying to add the color swatch pages in rainbow order, so I'm following the Roy G. Biv system, which would be red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, although I've kind of condensed indigo and violet into just purple. And I did this very deliberately, followed this Roy G. Biv rainbow pattern, because I'm going to mark the page edges in a way that makes it easy to find the color that I'm looking for, but it's also just going to make the edges of the journal look really, really cool, and I thought doing it in a proper rainbow would be the most fun way to make the most of that. But I needed to know where all of my swatch pages would fall before I mark the page edges, so that's something we're going to do together at the end. Don't worry, I'll show you how it works. Something I wanted to record in this journal just for my own enjoyment is the color names of the Tombow Jewel brush pens, because quite often I forget that they have a color name. We all kind of go by the color code, the 3-digit number that's on the barrel of those pens, but they have names too, and sometimes I think they're quite pretty or quite funny or quite interesting, so I wanted to make sure I was including that, but I needed to look up a reference chart online, and it was more efficient to write down the numbers off the barrels of the pens and then come back and fill those out later. So that's why I've started doing numbers without names, but we'll jump back and we'll fill those in later. my coloured pen swatched, so we're going to move into a new category now. We're going into the monochromatics and the metallics. Although there have been some colourful metallics in the previous pages, I thought they'd be more useful with their colour family than with the metallics. So I'm going more for just golds and silvers in my metallic category, but first we're going to do all of my black brush pens, which is a category that I love. I love a good black brush pen, and I didn't realize until using them all side by side like this that I definitely have preferences. And I think maybe some of them might be better suited to certain lettering styles than others. For instance, I find it much easier to get a thicker downstroke with the soft Tombow Fudenosuke, of course, but I also find it really difficult to control generally, so I think I prefer the hard one, which is a surprise to me. And the Pilot Fude Makase just can't be beat for writing in small spaces. It's the king of that. Next up, we've got all of the grayscale pens, which definitely have undertones that I think could put them into other color categories too at times. Like the N79 is almost beige, but not quite. The N60 is kind of purple, but not quite. And the N89, which is easily my most used grey marker, calls itself warm grey with its color name, but I actually think it's the most neutral of all of them. I use my grey markers quite a bit, so I anticipate this page will get quite a bit of use. Next up is another unusual one, and I had to get a bit creative to work out how to swatch this in this journal. This is white paint markers, which are really useful for going over darker colors or hiding mistakes sometimes in a journal, and I had to glue in some of my black paper to be able to see these. It's very interesting seeing how different ones show up on the page, because some of the matte Artistro brush pen paint markers don't show up at all on dark paper, but the metallic ones are fine, so that's interesting. I actually had to use a different white paint marker to label it so I knew what that swatch had been. And then our last category is the metallics, so this will be all of the golds and silvers, and I've really been enjoying the paint marker swatch system where I have a black page side and a gold page side, and I have the swatches on both of those corresponding so I can see very quickly what it looks like in different circumstances. So I'm going to bring that onto this page as well. Glitter gel pens are a new addition to my collection, and because they're so new, I kind of forgot that I had them, so I haven't included them in any of my swatches so far, which means we get to go back through and add these ones in. I'm not the biggest fan of gel pens because I'm a little bit impatient and you have to wait for them to dry before you can get in with erasers in your journal and that kind of thing, but I do think they have a place as a really fun decorative element to add a little bit of shimmer and sparkle to a page, so that's why these ones have recently joined my pen family. If you watched my recent JOURNALSAY haul video, then you will probably recognize them. You have seen them before. The color of the pens in the yellow and the gold barrels are almost indistinguishable with just the pen, so I confused them a couple of times, but that's okay. We'll just swatch both on both sides. And they do actually look different on the page, but in the barrel of the pen, it's very hard to tell the difference. It's so hard to see this pink one on camera, but I promise you it does show up to your actual eye in real life. Just the gold and silver variants left to swatch on my gold and silver spread, and I need to add some extra black paper to the bottom of that left page so I can really squeeze these last few in. And with that, the pen swatching section of this project is complete, which means we can move on to the part I'm most excited about, which is turning the edges of these pages into a rainbow for quick reference and also just for fun. I've gone through all of my solid washi tapes and picked out some of the thinnest ones that I have available in all of the same colors that I've been swatching my pens, and we're going to start with this super tiny pink. This one is actually from a bundle from Daiso here in Australia, but I'm sure you could find plenty of similar ones online if you have a look for a really thin pastel washi set. I'm using it to line the very edge of the page, overlapping about halfway, and then I can flip the page to the opposite side and wrap the washi tape around so it fully lines the edge of the page and encases it. Then for the red spreads, we're going to use the reddest washi tape that I have. I don't lean towards red very often, so this is kind of the best that I could do. This one's more of a burgundy, but it will still fit with the rainbow theme and I'll know what it means. It was a little too wide, so I've cut it down with my straight edge cutting tool to make a much narrower piece of tape. And it actually wasn't the only colour that I struggled finding a match for in my washi tape collection. I didn't want to buy any washi tapes just for this purpose, so I went with the closest to will do as my philosophy, and I really struggled with the orange. And I think that's because I've used my peachy orange quite a bit in my new journal setup semi-recently for my own journal, so it just ran out. I'm going with this kind of a yellow sand kind of a orange. It'll have to do. It's the best I've got. And transitioning from that into this kind of sandy beige colour. I didn't even have anything close to a solid yellow washi tape, so I've gone with this patterned one from the washi tape shop. I had to cut it down quite a bit to fit as well. Thankfully, the blues and the greens were not a problem at all. I have lots of those, which is lucky to tie in with my lots of pages of green swatches. And we will continue this process until all of the pages that have a swatch on them have some kind of washi tape lining the edges. I have skipped a couple in between where I'm not sure which way the swatches would go as I filled them up. So for instance, if I added more pink, they'll go after the pinks I've already swatched, but if I'm adding more reds, maybe they will go before the reds I've swatched, so I haven't committed those ones to a washi tape edge just yet. And when we get to the metallic section, I'm going to use a silver to line the edge so it's very clear what's going on there. I do also have some deep kind of charcoal greys that can go on the monochrome pages. I wasn't too sure what to do with my page swatch of white paint markers. Like I didn't really want to put a white tape along the edge because I feel like that would just interrupt the rainbow, so I left it blank for now. I may change my mind about that in the future, but for now I'd rather have options than not. And all that's left to do now is to clean up these corners because I've deliberately left them hanging over the edges a little bit to get full coverage there, so I can go through with my scissors now, round it all off and do them all in one go, which I think is a little bit more efficient than doing them one at a time. Let's have a look. Look at how impactful these page edges are. I'm in love with it so much already, and I've only really used about half of the book, maybe a little bit more than half. It reminds me of one of those pastel collections of cardstock that you can buy. I'm kind of living for it, what can I say? Let's have a full flip through from start to finish of all of these pen swatches. I'm sure I'll come back to that first page and turn it into a proper cover at some point, but that day is not today because I really just wanted to get this journal done so I could start using it. Is it my most aesthetically pleasing journal? Absolutely not, although I do think the cover is super cute. It is kind of concealing lots of chaos and mess inside, but that's part of the creative process as far as I'm concerned. You kind of have to go through the chaos to come out the other side, so I'm completely okay with the chaos and the mess inside of this journal as long as it's helping me to choose pens for my layouts that will be less chaotic and messy. Let's have a chat about pen swatches down in the comments. Do you have pen swatches in your journals, or do you have a dedicated journal like this one? Do you swatch anything else like fountain pen inks or watercolor paints in your swatch book? And if you are a swatcher, definitely let me know which color you found that you have the most of, and was it a surprise to you? Welcome to the family, little pen swatch library tiny journal. If you enjoyed swatching all of my pens with me and you want to keep talking about stationery, there is a link on the screen right now to a playlist that is all about stationery, as well as another video that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy.